You won't be needing these anymore, my supervisor Kevin said with a smirk as he permanently deleted 3 months of my project files from the company server. The presentation was in 2 hours and the entire executive team was already gathering in the conference room. My name is Ethan Cross, I'm 32 years old, and I work as a senior software developer for Nexacore Systems in San Francisco. For 6 months, I'd been developing an automation system that would revolutionize how our company handled client data processing. It was the kind of breakthrough that could define careers, secure promotions, and change everything. Kevin Brennan had been my department manager for 18 months, and he'd made it clear from day one that he saw me as a threat rather than an asset. At 45, Kevin was the kind of manager who'd climbed the corporate ladder through politics rather than performance, and my technical expertise highlighted everything he lacked. The project had started in January. Our biggest client, Morrison Industries, was threatening to terminate their contract unless we could improve processing efficiency by at least 40%. The executive team was desperate for a solution, and I'd volunteered to lead the development effort. Kevin had opposed the project from the beginning, claiming it was too ambitious and risky. But when CEO Rachel Hartwell approved my proposal, Kevin's opposition transformed into something more dangerous: active sabotage disguised as managerial oversight. Over the past 6 months, Kevin had systematically undermined my work. He'd reassigned key team members to other projects, denied requests for necessary resources, and questioned my progress in every weekly meeting. But his interference had taught me something valuable about corporate survival. Always have a backup plan. The signs of Kevin's escalating desperation had been building for weeks. He'd started asking increasingly detailed questions about my code architecture, requesting copies of documentation and insisting on access to all project files for security purposes. 3 weeks ago, Kevin had made his intentions clear during a private meeting in his office. "Ethan, I think we need to discuss realistic expectations for this Morrison project," he'd said, leaning back in his executive chair. "What do you mean?" "The timeline is aggressive, the scope is unrealistic, and frankly, I'm concerned about your ability to deliver. Maybe we should bring in additional expertise to ensure success." Additional expertise. Kevin's code for taking control of the project and claiming credit for any success. "I'm confident in the current approach," I'd replied. "The preliminary testing shows we're on track to exceed Morrison's requirements." Kevin's smile had been cold and calculating. "We'll see about that." That's when I knew Kevin was planning something dramatic. In the corporate world, managers don't make vague threats unless they're preparing to act on them. So I'd started taking precautions. For the past 3 weeks, I'd been working late every night, not just on the Morrison project, but on something Kevin couldn't see or suspect. Call it insurance, call it paranoia. But I'd learned that surviving in corporate environments required thinking like a chess player, always planning 3 moves ahead. The morning of the presentation, Kevin's behavior confirmed my suspicions. He'd arrived early, hovering near my workstation, asking pointed questions about my preparation and whether I had everything I needed for the meeting. At 10:30 a.m., Kevin had made his excuse about needing to review the server logs for security compliance. I'd watched him access the administrative controls, navigate to my project directory, and begin systematically deleting files. The delete confirmations echoed through the quiet office as Kevin eliminated months of work with methodical precision. Code files, documentation, test results, presentation materials, everything that represented the Morrison project disappeared from the company's servers. "Oops," Kevin said loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. "Looks like we had a system glitch. Ethan, it seems your project files got corrupted." The office fell silent. Sarah from accounting looked up from her desk with genuine concern. Mike from marketing stopped mid-conversation and stared. Everyone understood what this meant: career disaster, public humiliation, and certain termination. Kevin's performance was Oscar-worthy. He frowned at his screen, clicked around frantically, and shook his head with apparent frustration. "This is terrible timing," The Morrison presentation is in 2 hours and it looks like everything is gone. I sat quietly at my desk, watching Kevin's theatrical display with the detached interest of someone observing a chess opponent make a predictable move. Can anything be recovered? Sarah asked. Kevin shook his head gravely. Complete data loss. These things happen sometimes with complex systems. The sympathy in the room was genuine, but I noticed Kevin's barely suppressed satisfaction. He thought he'd just destroyed my career and eliminated his biggest threat. Kevin walked over to my desk with practiced concern. Ethan, I'm really sorry about this. Obviously, we'll need to postpone the Morrison presentation until we can reconstruct the project. That's unfortunate, I said calmly. Kevin's eyebrows rose slightly. He'd expected panic, desperation, maybe even tears. My calm response wasn't fitting his script. I know how much work you put into this project. Don't worry, we'll figure something out. I'm sure we will. Kevin studied my face, searching for cracks in my composure. Finding none, he retreated to his office to prepare for what he assumed would be his moment of triumph. At 11:45 a.m., I made a phone call. It's time, I said quietly into my phone. Understood, came the response. Everything's ready. Kevin emerged from his office at noon, dressed in his best suit and carrying a leather portfolio. He was planning to address the Morrison representatives himself, explaining the technical difficulties and positioning himself as the steady hand guiding the company through crisis. Ethan, why don't you take the rest of the day off? Kevin suggested. I'll handle the Morrison meeting and explain what happened. Actually, I think I'll attend the presentation as scheduled. Kevin's confident smile faltered slightly. There's no presentation to give, the files are gone. We'll see about that. At 12:30 p.m., I walked into conference room A carrying my laptop and a small external drive. CEO Rachel Hartwell was already seated at the head of the table, flanked by Morrison Industries executives, CEO James Morrison, CTO Linda Chang, and Operations Director Robert Kim. Kevin followed me into the room, his confusion visible despite his attempts to maintain composure. Ladies and gentlemen, Rachel began, we're here to review Ethan's automation solution for Morrison Industries' data processing challenges. Kevin cleared his throat. Actually, Rachel, we've encountered some technical difficulties. There was a server failure this morning that corrupted the project files. Is that so? Rachel looked at me. Ethan, can you proceed with the presentation? I opened my laptop and connected it to the conference room display. Absolutely. Let me show you what we've developed. Kevin's face went completely white as my presentation loaded perfectly on the screen. If corporate power plays and mind games excite you, smash that subscribe button. What happens next will shock you. For the next 45 minutes, I walked the Morrison team through the automation system I'd developed. The software exceeded their efficiency requirements by 63%, included advanced security features they hadn't requested, and demonstrated seamless integration with their existing infrastructure. James Morrison leaned forward as I demonstrated the real-time processing capabilities. This is remarkable. The speed improvement alone would save us millions annually. Linda Chang nodded approvingly at the security architecture. The encryption protocols and access controls are exactly what we need for compliance. Robert Kim was taking detailed notes throughout the technical demonstration. How quickly can this be implemented across our entire operation? Full deployment within 8 weeks, I replied. The modular design allows for phased rollout with minimal disruption. Throughout the presentation, Kevin sat frozen in his chair, staring at the screen with growing horror. The project he'd thought he destroyed was not only intact, but more comprehensive than anything he'd seen before. When I finished the technical demonstration, Rachel addressed the Morrison team. Any questions about the proposed solution? James Morrison exchanged glances with his colleagues. This exceeds our expectations significantly. We're prepared to move forward immediately. Excellent, Rachel said. Ethan, Would you mind stepping out while we discuss contract terms? As I gathered my materials, Kevin finally found his voice. Wait, how is this possible? The files were completely deleted from our servers. I turned to face Kevin directly. Were they? I saw the deletion confirmations myself. Everything was wiped. Everything visible on the surface was wiped. But Kevin, you made a critical assumption about where I store my work. Kevin's confusion was genuine and complete. What do you mean? For the past 3 weeks, I've been conducting my development work on an isolated system completely separate from company servers. What you deleted this morning were dummy files, placeholder documents designed to look like the real project. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You knew I was going to delete the files? I knew you were planning to sabotage the presentation. Your behavior patterns over the past month made your intentions obvious. Rachel's expression hardened as she processed what she was hearing. Kevin, are you saying you deliberately deleted project files? Kevin's face cycled through confusion, panic, and desperate calculation. There was a system glitch. I was trying to help. Actually, I interrupted. I have the complete server logs from this morning's activity. I opened another application on my laptop. These logs show administrative access to my project directory at 10:47 a.m., followed by systematic file deletion commands initiated from Kevin's user account. The timestamp evidence was undeniable. Kevin had accessed the files with administrative privileges and deleted them manually, one by one. This wasn't a system glitch, Linda Chang observed. This was deliberate sabotage. Kevin stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. Ethan is obviously lying to cover up his own incompetence. Am I? I asked. Because I also have audio recordings of our conversation 3 weeks ago, where you threatened to bring in additional expertise to ensure project success. Kevin's hands began shaking as he realized the full scope of what was happening. You recorded our private conversation? I documented a supervisor making veiled threats about undermining a critical company project. The recordings are completely legal under California law. Rachel's voice was ice cold when she spoke. Kevin, sit down, now. Kevin slumped back into his chair, finally understanding that his sabotage attempt had been anticipated, documented, and turned into evidence of his own misconduct. Ethan, continue with the contract discussion, Rachel said. Kevin, you and I will be having a very different conversation after this meeting. The Morrison contract was signed within an hour, a 3-year agreement worth $47 million with performance bonuses that could push the total value past $60 million. After the Morrison team left, Rachel, Kevin, and I remained in the conference room. Kevin explained to me how you thought deleting critical project files on the day of our most important presentation was appropriate behavior. Kevin's defense was pathetic and predictable. He claimed he was protecting the company from an unproven solution, that my approach was reckless, that he was exercising proper managerial oversight. By sabotaging the presentation? Rachel asked. By preventing a potential disaster. The only disaster here is your judgment. Rachel turned to me. Ethan, how long have you known about Kevin's sabotage plans? 3 weeks. That's when I started developing contingency plans and documenting his interference with the project. And you didn't report this to me? I needed proof of deliberate sabotage, not just suspicions about poor management. Today's actions provided that proof. Rachel reviewed the server logs on my laptop, studying the timestamps and deletion commands. This is premeditated destruction of company property and interference with a critical business operation. Kevin made one final attempt to control the narrative. Rachel, Ethan has been insubordinate and secretive throughout this project. He clearly can't be trusted to work within proper management structures. Kevin, Rachel said quietly, you're fired, effective immediately. Kevin's face went from pale to ashen gray. You can't fire me over a misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is corporate sabotage, documented with irrefutable evidence. Security escorted Kevin from the building 30 minutes later. He left carrying a cardboard box containing his personal items and a termination letter outlining the grounds for his dismissal. 2 weeks later, Rachel offered me Kevin's position as department manager, along with a substantial salary increase and equity participation in the Morrison contract's success bonuses. I accepted the promotion but requested one modification to the standard management structure. All project work would be conducted on secure, isolated systems with multiple backup protocols. No single person would ever again have the ability to destroy months of work with a few mouse clicks. The Morrison automation system was implemented ahead of schedule and exceeded all performance targets. The client was so impressed with the results that they requested additional projects, generating another $32 million in revenue over the following year. Kevin found employment with a smaller firm 6 months later, though his references from Nexicor were notably unremarkable. Word travels fast in the tech industry, and managers who sabotage their own teams rarely find equivalent positions elsewhere. Sometimes the best response to workplace sabotage isn't retaliation or confrontation. Sometimes it's simply being better prepared than your saboteur, anticipating their moves and letting their own actions become the evidence of their unfitness for leadership. Kevin had assumed that destroying my work would destroy my career. Instead, his sabotage attempt destroyed his own credibility and handed me the promotion he'd been trying to prevent me from earning. In the end, Kevin's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating my technical abilities. It was underestimating my understanding of human nature and corporate politics. The best revenge isn't always getting even. Sometimes it's just being 3 moves ahead when your opponent thinks they're winning.